No Jinx for Monday. It's game week. It's game season week, season opening. The Nuggets are going to play this week, and we're going to talk about how to project their wins, how many wins we think that they'll have. We're going to take a look around the league and who we're higher and lower on after seeing preseason, and we're going to give you bold predictions for the first 10 games of the Nuggets season. All that and more. No Jinx on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and being with us, being part of the community. Appreciate it, whether you're joining us on podcast, where we do appreciate those 5-star reviews. Just take a second, just pop open the app and and you're done. Or if you're joining us on youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets, hit the like and subscribe button. You hear that on every single thing. We are battling to climb up the charts. We need your help. So send us to a friend, hit the like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Let us know. Leave us a comment at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets on this video and let us know how many wins you think Denver will have. I want the chat bumping with how many wins you think Denver will have this season. We do have lots of folks hanging out with us tonight. Dragutin's already in here. Cedric Exquisite is here. 5-ish is here. Slandering a certain team that I tend to enjoy. Daniel Barry is in here. John Steichen. Should be a good show. Excited to have you with us on Monday. My name's Matt Moore. You can catch me on Locked On NBA this week on Tuesday with David Ramil. We'll give you a preview of all the opening night games. He's Ryan Blackburn. He's from Mile High Sports and the Pickaxe and Roll podcast. You can catch him all over the interwebs at NBA Blackburn on Twitter. On today's show, we're going to do bold predictions for the first 10 games of the season. What are we going to see from the Nuggets this season as we start off in the first 10 games of the season? We're going to talk about teams that we're higher or lower on after seeing in preseason. We'll look around the league, some general NBA talk, but we start, Ryan, with this. Win projections for the Nuggets. So the win total in the market currently has the Denver Nuggets slated. There are mostly 51.5s in the market painted. There are 49.5s. No, there's 50.5s and 51.5s in the betting market. ESPN, as Swipa will tell you a million times over in excruciating, offended detail, has them at 47.4. I will just say this. A prominent Denver Nugget media member has them in the high 40s. I'm not going to out him because I don't know if he's given that pick out yet or not, but he's out there. Ryan Blackburn, I will ask you, how many games are the Denver Nuggets going to win this season?
Matt, I have the Denver Nuggets winning 52 games.
Ooh.
I have them basically sitting right on that line of that win projection that Vegas is coming out with. They're trying to go. Obviously, it's not really a win projection. It is what they're trying to get on the upper side of the market and the downside of the market. You know this, working at the Action Network, of course. Obviously, Denver won 57 games last year. They lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Everybody thinks they're going to get worse. They're not going to be as good. I will just sit here and say this. You have the stat on Michael Malone. You have the stat on how good of a coach he is in general, win projections against the spread. I would suggest people fully internalize that. I would suggest them say, hey, this team is generally really, really good when they are healthy. And there are enough elements, including Nikola Jokic, that generally push them above those win projections rather easily. So it's something where you probably shouldn't overreact to all of the negativity, including from yours truly.
I was about to say, you mean the negativity that we unloaded last week on Thursday?
We certainly did. And I had to take a mulligan on that, a chill pill on that on several shows. But what I will say is that this Nuggets group, they are, I think, a little bit more volatile than they were before in a playoff environment. But I do think that in a regular season environment, this team has a chance to be better. It may not be better, but it has a chance to be better. And if it is anywhere close to healthy for an entire season, then 51.5 might actually seem pretty funny.
I always like to talk about this because the psychology of fandom really fascinates me. And so this is what's really funny is so many Nuggets fans have heard so much negativity that they are doing what you are doing, which is it's this inverse effect of not only will they not be worse, they're gonna be better than ever. Which is why I'm like trying very hard to be like, they're not gonna be bad. Like, this is the difference, is all the negativity sounds like the Nuggets are gonna be bad. Like Simmons, even, who loves Jokic, like that entire podcast makes it sound like the Nuggets are gonna be bad. The Denver Nuggets are not gonna be bad. They're not gonna be 500. They're not gonna be slightly above 500. They're gonna be well above 500. The projection system that I use, which I can't really tweak all that much, like I make manual adjustments, but there's only so much I can do. I have 2 ratings. So the number 1 projection is like, okay, how many are they going to win schedule neutral? Just like, this is how good you are. What does that mean? And that number is 50.5. And I like that number. I really like 50.5, where I'm like, it might be 50, it might be 51. They still go under by like a half game. That to me seems like a very reasonable outcome, where like, yeah, they might go over if they win, if the 3-point games, like games decided by 3 points or less, if those swing in their direction, could absolutely happen. But they're going to be worse than last year, and they're probably going to be low 50s instead of high 50s. When I schedule adjust it, that's when I wind up with 47.4, right in line with ESPN's projection. So,
interesting. So what is it about their schedule that's pulling it down?
You want to know it? Here's the honest reason. The reason that it's pulled down relative to what I expect is that my schedule adjusted does not adjust for home court. It gives everybody a standard home court adjustment. And the reason I do that is because year to year, home court performance is very variable in the NBA. Like, the Jazz were awesome last year. 2 years ago, the Warriors were amazing at home and couldn't win a road game to save their souls. Last season, I have them as a negative at home. Like, they were worse at home than on the road. So, like, to get around that, because I'm doing this like across the board, I'm not giving the Nuggets more in home court advantage, even though every indicator historically says that versus the 2.5 that I use, I should be giving Denver like 5 points of home court advantage, because that's just 4 points of home court advantage, because that's what they've been. So like, that honestly like would change it pretty dramatically if that's how it would come out. So.
Yeah, that's also one of the things, if you pay attention to the GM survey at all, I think they nominated the Nuggets as having the best home court advantage in the NBA. So if there was a team to sort of manually adjust that for, it would probably be for this Nuggets team. Especially, looks like they're going to be playing a little bit faster, a little bit more frenetic, trying to get up and down a little bit more. Maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. But I tend to think that one of the best moments for Denver, the 2012-2013 season, was when they played as fast as possible in transition. It's maybe a possibility that they're better in transition this year than they were last year, when for much of the year they were horrible. They were horrible in transition. It's one of the reasons why they actually played slower. So maybe this is one of those improvements that we could be talking about. There are obviously things that will potentially take away from that number, but I do think that in aggregate, this Nuggets team, from a win-loss basis, is probably about where they were, maybe slightly less. I have them at 52 because I respect what other people have done. I'm putting OKC a little bit higher. I have Minnesota higher than Denver. I have Denver third in the West, tied with the Dallas Mavericks.
Okay. I have Denver lower, unsurprisingly. I have Denver as 1, 2, 3, 4. I have them currently, I said this the other day, I gave this out the other day, but I have them currently tied for 5th. I don't like these numbers because like I'm too high on the Pelicans. Like I'm probably gonna manually adjust them after this podcast, actually, as I'm gonna drop down the Pelicans. And the Grizzlies are there, and I just don't know if they're gonna be healthy. So like I still like Denver to finish 5th more than anybody else. I wouldn't be shocked if they finished 6th. I'd be very surprised if they finished 7th.
Do you have Dallas 6th?
Oh, no, sir. No, I have the Dallas Mavericks 3rd by quite a little bit. I am extremely high on the Dallas Mavericks this season. I think they're going to win 55 games. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, maybe there's a nice little teaser for the other side where we could talk about some of the teams we're higher and lower on.
Yeah, we'll talk about that up next. We will get into that. We'll talk about kind of preseason impressions and some teams that we think might be better than you might think, and some teams that I'm kind of worried about, like the team that went winless in the preseason in the Western Conference. Talk about that next here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. What's something that scares you? Share a fear, no matter how big or small. I will tell you that my biggest fear is when you have I've said this a lot, that as you get older, the definition for me of growing up, quote unquote, is that it's when you start to realize that you actually have stuff to lose. When you're young and single and just kind of going, it feels like you're not really responsible for anything. And then as you get older and you have more success, you have things like you have to take care of a house, like you're responsible for the home and making sure that you can stay in that home. You're responsible for your family and making sure that they're okay. You take on more responsibility. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us, but what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts? I am scared of ghosts, by the way. Don't mess around with ghosts. They're terrified. Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Grief in the comments over at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets says, Dallas? Guys, they made the Western. They won the Western Conference.
NBA Finals, yeah. The NBA Finals.
And then they added Klay Thompson, Najee Marshall, and Quentin Grimes. Even if you think Klay sucks, Derek Lively's a year better. That alone, when Lively and Luka played together last season, they won at a 53-win pace. I don't know what else to tell you. I think Dallas is gonna be really good.
I think they'll be really good too. I struggled whether to put them above Denver or not. The theory behind adding Klay Thompson is it helps just over the course of a regular season. He's going to shoot really well. He's going to be pretty good next to Luka. And if Kyrie gives them more games than he gave them last year, then there's something to be said for that. But the larger bit of this is that after the trade deadline, Dallas was a different team. It is important for people to treat them as a different team this year, and I think they've got a really good supporting cast too.
Okay, so let's talk about some teams that we're maybe lower on or higher on as we head into the season. I do want to kind of ask you, how much of this is like based off of watching preseason, or is this just like versus the consensus for you?
For me, I went back and I looked through different numbers for teams in the preseason. I wanted to see, okay, like for the Sacramento Kings, who we'll probably talk about in a little bit, they went 0-5 and they shot horribly. I think they were 25% from three this year for a team that is, in the preseason, for a team that is supposed to have pretty good shooting, pretty solid spacers and pretty solid pieces. That is a large concern. It's a large concern to not have that. So I like their over under is, I think, 46.5 on FanDuel, or at least it was when I checked it yesterday. I have them at 44 wins and 8th in the West, and it could be lower.
Who are you down on with them?
With them specifically, I think that Fox's year last year wasn't amazing from an efficiency standpoint. It was a lot of volume. I also just think that DeMar and De'Aaron Fox, your overall baseline for efficiency isn't going to be that high with those two guys. The spacing isn't going to be that great. They are going to get worse on defense with DeMar in there, as opposed and like taking away, I think, a veteran in Harrison Barnes who could actually do some stuff. Not saying that Harrison Barnes is the be all end all, but he knew his role. And I've never been a big fan of Sabonis in general. That's one where I understand the theory behind the practice, but I'm just not a big proponent of Sabonis lifting this team up on his back.
So I was ready to be going to preseason and buy into the Kings and be like, this is going to be a regular season like wagon. Like it's going to be all vibes, light the beam. They'll flame out in the playoffs, but regular season, I'm in. And then they went 0-5, and it's like, Matt, it's preseason. Who cares? One, I looked it up, and since 2013, teams that have gone winless in the preseason go under their win total way more often than over. The other thing that was actually more interesting to me was I caught a news item, which was the Kings had lost their first 2 preseason games, and then at practice, they had like an absolutely miserable practice. And Mike Brown stops practice, and he blows up everybody, including the starters. Like he is going off on the starters. And then the next game, they got blown out. And I was like, now, the Kings fans have been like, but the starters were fine in that game. Okay, all right. Fair enough. This isn't an absolute. Like, I'm not like, ooh, I'm telling you, the Kings are going to win 35 games and everyone's getting fired. It's just more of, I went from, I might be in on the Kings to, nope, I'm good on the Kings this season based off of it. And a lot of this is like, they may start off slow and then turn the corner. They could win their first 10 and it wouldn't shock me. This is how it goes sometimes. But I am definitely lower. My only thing with Sabonis is he's a regular season monster. DeRozan's a regular season monster. I will also defend Fox here. Fox was 94th percentile in half court plus minus and 94th percentile in transition and 87th percentile offensively in half court.
He's a good player.
He was 96th percentile in EPM and 98th percentile in estimated wins. Like, not just like he's a good player. No, like he was awesome last year. When you're looking at the efficiency, you're like, well, it's from a volume. The increase in volume has to be like, you have to adjust expectations for the efficiency based off of that.
No mistaking it. I think he's their best player personally. I think he's better than Sabonis. I think he drives their winning a little bit more, especially in these higher leverage situations where teams like they'll adjust to what Sabonis does during the regular season. But I just think that teams have now seen it for a little bit. Their spacing's just going to get a little bit more cramped. And yes, DeMar will create some good shots for them. I'm not sure he's going to create great shots for them all the time. And that's really where I'm coming down to it. Although I did pick Malik Monk to win 6th man.
Okay. I'm higher on the Suns. They're bombing threes. They seem like they bought in.
Yeah.
Like, I would be very, very afraid if I was a fan of a Western Conference team. I would be like very annoyed that all of a sudden this team that has not been able to get itself straight and has just been this collection of stars with no real identity seems like they look like a team this year. That's not good given the talent on that roster.
Yeah, from a Nuggets perspective, I wouldn't like. There's still some holes that they're going to present in a playoff series, but Denver lost to them twice in the regular season last year, and it was like very close together. And both of those games look very similar, where Kevin Durant just drove winning for them, looked really good, and there's no reason why they can't kind of follow that same mold in the regular season this year. When they were playing the Nuggets, they bombed threes. They did a nice job. I think that was already something that was in their back pocket that they could do. It was just more of an active choice. I think that they're making the choice this year, and they have the personnel to do it. Like, Nuggets fans just saw it. This is going to be one where they're going to get up 45 to 53s against a lot of these teams. So kind of in that general range of the play-in, I was surprised at how much higher I was on the Lakers than I thought I was going to be. Their win projection for FanDuel is 42.5.
Yep.
That seems really low, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It seems really low.
So it took money on the under and went down. I believe I have this. I know I have it. It opened at 45.5 and moved all the way down to 42.5.
Yeah.
And it's really just like the synthesis is just everybody's like, LeBron and AD aren't playing that many games again. Come on. Like, they're not playing that many games. JJ Redick can't be so much of an improvement over Darvin Ham that happens. I think some of the young guys like Max Christie, they really believe in Max Christie. Dalton Connect obviously had the big game the other night. He'll help. I don't think he's like a revelation or a rookie of the year candidate. He'll help.
Yeah.
Redick will play more of the optimized lineups. I still worry about D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves as a backcourt combo.
Sure.
I have them over. I'm really high on them too. Like I'm really because they're a really good half court offense team, and those teams always do well in my system. If you're good at half court offense and defense, you're going to do really well in my projections. And like they're good at it. That's where you spend most of your time, and that's where they're good. The kind of the pushback is twofold. There's two things really going against them. One, LeBron and AD playing that many games again doesn't seem likely. My counter is if you talk to that team, they were like, we just haven't been healthy. And it's like, well, LeBron and AD have played. And if you don't think that role players matter, then I get it. But it's less about the role players and how good they are. And it's more about you just need 5 guys on the floor consistently to learn how to play together and to execute better. And they never had that because everybody was hurt. Everybody else was really hurt. Gabe Vincent missed almost the entire year. So you couldn't go to Gabe Vincent if you were getting killed defensively in the backcourt. You just couldn't do it. And so like Austin Reeves plus minus numbers were an atrocity because they couldn't get to anything else. And now they can. The roster's a little bit better. Coaching's a little bit better. Like I agree it's over. The other thing though is they were exceptional in 3-point games last year and games decided by 3 points or less. Those teams have gone under the following season about 70% of the time. And they were the strongest team in those categories. So it's like natural regression of LeBron and AD won't win as many 3-point games closer to this number, but I still can't get to 42.5 no matter what I do.
It's hard to do. Last one here before I know we have to hit another break. Predict who has more wins between San Antonio and the LA Clippers.
God, this is a good question. I was going to bring up the Spurs. I don't know how to. I will say the Spurs because I have no idea how to predict Victor Wembanyama. I have no idea. I don't know what to expect. He could be like a little bit better. He could be a lot better. He could be the 5th best player in the NBA. He could be the 12th best player in the NBA. He could win Defensive Player of the Year. He's the favorite right now to win Defensive Player of the Year and Most Improved.
It's crazy. It's insane.
Not, and it doesn't seem you're like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's not going to happen, but it makes sense. I will say the Spurs, but I will say that the Clipper number now, the Clipper expectations have now reached rock bottom, and I'm ready to be like, yeah, they're probably going to be better than that.
I am officially just going to make the bet that Kawhi and James Harden will play a combined under 100 games.
Ooh.
And that's just where it has to be in order to sort of justify these numbers. Somebody has to lose in the Western Conference. It's going to be Portland. It's going to be Utah. I have the Clippers at 32 wins and San Antonio 34, but I couldn't quite get to the over with San Antonio, which I think it's 35.5 or so. That is a high number for a 13th seed, Matt. Or a 12th seed.
Yeah, I agree. All right. On the other side, we're going to give you some bold predictions. We're going to do bold predictions for the first 10 games of the Nuggets season. We'll talk about that up next here on Locked On Nuggets. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, like maybe you should not make Patrick Mahomes a dog ever in any circumstance, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. We'll see if the Broncos can get another win streak started here this week. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets.
Got to close it out.
Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Last segment on No Jinx. Swipe will be with you on Tuesday. I assume probably talking about the opening night games as well as getting you ready. There's practice tomorrow, so you'll have notes from Ryan on that. Make sure to keep an eye on that. And need to tell you, we are launching a brand new newsletter. Okay. Every Locked On show is going to have one. We're going to have one as well. It's going to have great features from people like Katie Heindel. Ryan and I are going to trade off, and sometimes it'll talk about stuff that we talked about on the podcast. But a lot of the time, especially for me, you're getting like actual written stuff from me, like on the Nuggets on a nightly basis. Like most home games, I will write on from the arena for this newsletter. So you're going to want to sign up for the Locked On Nuggets newsletter. There'll be a link for you on Twitter. We'll put it in the episode description when we're ready to launch it. All those types of things. Be on the lookout for the Locked On Nuggets newsletter. You'll be hearing more about that in the coming days. All right, Ryan. So the Nuggets' first 10 games. You wanted to do this segment. I think it's a really good idea. I will lay out the schedule. First 10 games, they play the Oklahoma City Thunder. They play the Los Angeles Clippers at 2:00 in the afternoon. They play the Toronto Raptors. They're at Raptors, Nets, and the Wolves on November 1st.
Big game.
That's a very big game. Then Utah, Toronto, OKC again, Miami, and Dallas in a 5-game homestand. They have a 5-game homestand of Jazz, Raptors, Thunder, Heat, Mavericks. All right, we'll just trade off here. Give me 10. Let's go through some bold predictions on the first 10 games of the Nuggets season.
The first one is that it's not going to be that bold. I think the Nuggets go 5-5 through that stretch, and there are a lot of questions, especially given that Denver has 7 home games there, where you've got 7 home games, you've got a 3-game road trip in the midst of that. But there's going to be some losses. There's going to be some adjustment period. And I think a lot of people are going to be wondering, hey, is everything okay? Potentially some games where Christian Brown doesn't close the game and Russell Westbrook does.
That's a lot of predictions. You just gave out. You
gave out all of it.
All of it in like one, just cramming your mouth full like my son does when he eats hot dog. I will go. First off, my first prediction is they will go 7-3 to start. They're going to split with the Thunder. I'm going to give them most of these home games. Like Dallas is tough, right? If I think Dallas is better, but Denver's at home, so like I have to give the edge to Denver there. The Brooklyn game is a back-to-back, but it's so early in the season, it should be fine. I'll give them the Wolves game as a loss. So it's like Wolves, one of the Thunder games, and then pick your choice of another game.
Yeah.
Is kind of where this falls into. So I'll say 7-3 to start. I think that's much closer here. I don't know why they would, with this schedule. Who do you think who's handing them 5 losses here, Ryan?
It's a good question, and I didn't really fully internalize before I picked the number. More of it was just me trying to be bold. I think the Thunder could potentially give them 2 losses on the road, and that would feel really, really bad. It would feel bad. Really, really bad. Yeah. But there's also a possibility that Denver wins both of those games, and that flips this entire thing to 7-3 or 8-2. Like I don't want to sit here and say that I'm down because I still have Denver winning 52 games. Like they're going to come somewhere. I just tend to think that the adjustment period for Denver is going to be a little bit tough, and that there's going to be some stuff that they're going to have to work through with both units, not just the bench unit, but the starters as well. When you're kind of working out some kinks that you have when you just add a new player in.
Have you seen the movie Remember the Titans?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So there's a scene where one of the boosters, who's not a nice man, but his son gets yanked from the game, and he's out there yelling, Yost! Like yelling at him to put his son back in.
Yeah.
That's going to be Harrison Wind if they bench Christian Brown for Russell Westbrook in the late game. That's absolutely going to happen. Wind is going to be like losing his mind if they pull. I'm just kidding. I love it
because here's the thing, man. Like I think that Michael Malone is going to reward Russell Westbrook if he plays well. He has already called him the 6th bet. Like he's called him 3 of the top 6 players were out, and he was referencing Murray, Jokic, and Westbrook. He said those words verbatim. So I think that there is going to be some, maybe not internal pressure, but Malone wanting to give Westbrook a shot with that group when he can get it. And if he plays really well, there's going to be some games where he's going to close and he's going to play some extended, like 28 to 30 minutes off the bench. And that's going to be very interesting to track and see, like, how does that work? In previous years, it worked great with Bruce Brown, but it also sometimes didn't work well when Facu Campazzo was doing it. So I'm not comparing Russell Westbrook to Facu Campazzo. That is not what I'm going to do here. He is more Bruce Brown than Facu Campazzo. Let me just say that. But I do think that there will be some growing pains for the Nuggets early in the season.
I like how you're like, I can antagonize Russ stands or Facu fans. Wait, I'll do both. I know. I'll make them both mad. That's what I'll do. So I think I'll say this. I think if he puts Russ in clutch late game environments and it doesn't work, that's going to get ugly. That's like, those are going to be tension points, right? Fans are going to lose their mind. Why did you bench Christian? Why did you put Russ in?
Why didn't you put Julian in, who played a great preseason?
Okay. So Grief says this. Grief, who's had a lot to say tonight, says if Brown ever gets benched, it will be for Strother, in my opinion. No, come on. He's not playing second-year Julian in late-game situations.
I mean, I don't know. Like, he had the most points in preseason, man. Like, if Julian has
hang on.
Yeah.
I want you to go through every possible stat that Michael Malone could ever see, and I want you to rank where most points in preseason would land on that list for him making a late game sub in a regular season game in a close game.
You know what would do it though? 5 3-pointers made. I'm not kidding you.
I'm not. I disagree. I'm dead serious. He won't do it. He will not put him into, because he will not put Julian into a position where it's actually like, it's like he doesn't trust him, but it's also like, if Julian comes in and makes a young player mistake in that environment, that hurts him with those starters.
Okay.
Like, that's a bad situation for Julian. Like, on some degree, you have to kind of protect Julian also because he won't have played that many minutes. Like, you got to work the man up to it. So I will say, we could make a little dinner bet on this. I will say Julian Strother will not close a single game in this 10-game stretch.
Okay, I also said Russ was going to be the one to close, so That's perfectly fair. Do you have any other bold predictions here?
I will say that on the other end of the Julian thing, I think that everyone's going to be calling for Julian to start after the first 10 games.
I think he's going to start the season pretty well. I think it's going to look pretty good.
I mean, it's just like, if you make 3-pointers, it's just very hard for fans not to want you to play more. I still think that they're just going to kill these bad teams. I just think that they're going to kill Toronto. They're going to kill the Clippers. They're at home. They're going to kill Brooklyn. They're going to kill Utah. They're going to kill Toronto again. Miami is a little bit tougher, but I just don't know that Miami. Here's like a good example of even though Swipa's little diatribe the other day was a bit much, I do think that he was right in this regard, that there is this kind of idea that Denver's in the subclass, and I'm like, Denver's still a heavyweight. Miami's not a heavyweight. I don't care that they went to the finals 2 years ago. They're not a heavyweight. Dallas is a heavyweight. They play OKC again, and Dallas are 3 heavyweight matchups for Denver. But everybody else is like midweight or worse.
Yeah.
And Denver should just bruise them like they do most bad teams.
That's definitely fair. I think that how Denver approaches this is going to be really interesting. Like, are they going to be looking to come out for blood in these first 10 games? Or are they going to be kind of letting the foot off the gas once they feel like they're comfortable, or if they just don't really get into the swing of things in a game, are they going to kind of give in? I'm curious to see how that works too. I will say if there's one other thing that I'm really curious about, it's Peyton Watson. I think that Peyton Watson is going to be like Michael Malone said that he was very important for what they were doing this year. He has to say that, of course, because he's a third-year player who's a young guy who is going to be in the rotation when everybody's at full strength. I worry about it because Christian Braun last year kind of had a little bit of a slow start. It was kind of a struggle to figure out where to play him, how much to play him, because he didn't play in preseason at all. I wonder if the same thing happens with Peyton Watson, or if it's just kind of a ready-made fit with their group, because you know what Russell Westbrook's going to do and Julian Strother's going to do and Dario Saric is going to do. So I think that Peyton just fits really well into that trio and making it a quartet off the bench, but how Denver sort of reacts around that, I don't really know.
Before we get out of here, by the way, Gabriel Greer says 10-0 to start the season. Shouts to Gabriel for the confidence.
That'd be sick.
And who is it that said it? John wants to know our Jokic, us to predict Jokic's season stats. Okay. So I will give out 25 points per game, which is 1.4 lower than last year. 12.5 rebounds per game, which is 0.1 higher than last year, and 8.49 assists per game is what I will put.
So kind of lower across the board, huh?
A little bit lower across the board. Not as many assists because the team isn't as good. A little bit worse scoring just because I think he won't play as much as he did last year. And then the rebounds will still be amazing because he's just an awesome rebounder.
I will go with the rebounding being higher.
Okay.
I think that there's going to be a lot of run out opportunities within the starting unit, and there's going to be a lot of guys that give Jokic the ball, and Jokic is going to get a lot of D rebounds. So I'll go with 26 flat. So just a slight drop off there. 13 rebounds and 8.5 assists. I do think that the assists drop as well.
All right. That's going to do it for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. Check us out tomorrow with Swipa. Make sure to look on Twitter and the episode description for our new Locked On Nuggets newsletter. We'll see you guys again next time here on Locked On Nuggets.